Good morning, friends. Today I am with you to discuss about one of the important theory of learning propounded by Robert Gangs, who is generally called, or this theory is popularly known as Gangs' theory of hierarchy of learning. Here he tries to explain how learning takes place, how learning takes place from different conditions, from different situations in a hierarchical order. In the very beginning of the first slides, you can see the hierarchy model given by Gangs. There you can see in the bottom, you see signal learning, the stage of signal learning, then stimulus response learning, then psychomotor conditioning learning, then verbal association learning, then multidisciplinary learning, then concept learning, then principle learning, then problem solving. So, how these hierarchy takes place in our learning and how the complexity increase. When the complexity increase, the standard of learning also increased, and more the cognitive aspects, the collection of the assimilation of cognitive aspects help us to learn. The more behavioral aspects, there is two part in the hierarchy. You can see uh, from the slide, the beginning four parts comes under more behavioral aspects. Then the upper four parts, you can see the more cognitive aspects. So the behavioral conditions and the cognitive aspects, this helps us to learn. By consequencing instruction in this way, one create external condition which complement the internal conditions. These phases of learning are typically series of external and internal events that constitute a single learning act. The internal conditions of the learning includes two factors. First, the learner psychological state of mind, and the second, the cognitive process that requires for learning. The internal process may be influenced by external event in the form of environmental stimulation. The behaviorist concentrates on the external stimulation and conditions provided by the environment or behavioral changes. On the other hand, cognitive theories stress on internal conditions of behavioral changes, that is, insight, information processing, and memories. But in reality, learning depends on both external and internal conditions. To make this point clear, I will go to present the view of Robert Gagne, whose approach is said to be a synthesis of cognitivism and behaviorism. Robert Gagne is a prominent educational psychologist whose ideas on the conditions of learning are generally followed in every teaching learning process. He identified the factor which deals with complex nature of human learning. He focused on performance or competency based education. According to him, learning is a process that takes place inside an individual's brain, comparably and to an organic process. The most important aspect of the learning or the learner are his senses, his central nervous system, and his muscles. Now the big question arises. The question arises, what are the conditions of learning or what are the situations of learning according to Gagne? The first situation or condition given by Robert Gagne is signal learning. The individual acquires a condition response to a given signal. The learning is involuntary. This is the simplest form of learning and consists essentially for the classical conditioning first described by the behavioral psychologist Pavlov. In this type of learning, the animal or individual acquires a condition response to a given situation. For example, you take away your hand from fire. Why you take away from why you take away your hand from the fire? Because you feel the heat. When your hand come across the fire, your senses activated and feel the heat and feel the burn aspect. That's why you put your hand back from the fire. This is the signal. In the Pavlov classical conditioning theory, where you can go to the experiment of Pavlov, the dog was signaled different signal one after another. First, the sound of the plate. When he hears the sound of the plate, he knows that the eating time was come. That is the signal, the condition. We put different type of conditions within us in classical. For another example of signal learning, you can take your wake up time also. In a certain time, we generally wake up daily. This is the signal. This is the condition. This is the situation. Then another situation or condition of learning is stimulus response learning. Here, the individual make responses to a specific stimulus. Means the correct response in which he or she rewarded. The responses in stimulus response learning is fairly precise, whereas the response in signal learning are emotional. Stimulus response, SR learning, may be used in acquiring verbal skill as well as physical movement. This is also known as operant conditioning, generally developed by Skinner. In this kind of learning, we generally train animals by giving some specific command. Later on, the master doesn't have to do anything special. The animal sit, stay, or lie down upon the learning by the hearing of the simple verbal command from the master. The next one is the chaining condition. The next one is the chaining condition. Two or more previously learned stimulus response connection are linked together. This is a more advanced form of learning in which the subject develop the ability to connect two or more previously learned stimulus response bond into a linked sequence. It is a process whereby most complex psychomotor skill, that is riding a bicycle or playing a piano, we learn. In this type of learning, the person link together the previous learned SR or the previous experience. The link may involve physical reaction such as an animal learn a series of tricks. A series of tricks learned by the animal, each of which gives the cues to perform the next tricks, the perform the next level. This type of learning often seen to occur so naturally that we do not notice the specific series of events which lead it to do. For example, when you try to ride a motorcycle, the previous learned experience of riding cycling is to help you, but you don't know the specific series of event in which way you learn cycle bicycle that help you to learn how to ride a bike. The next condition of learning or situation of learning is verbal association. Chains that are verbal, that is, a child identify an object and call it by its proper name, just like green tree, red apple, etc. This is a form of chaining in which the link between the item being connected are verbally in nature. Verbal association is one of the key process in the development of language skill. This learning is a type of chaining, but the links are verbal units. The simplest verbal association is the activity of naming an object, which involve a chain of two links. An observing response enables the child to identify properly the object he sees, and the internal stimulus enables the child to say the proper name. Here is the two chain situation. When the child can name the object, he learned the verbal association or link. The next is the multi-discrimination condition of learning. Here, the learner learns to distinguish between motor and verbal chaining, which has already he or she acquired. This involves developing the ability to make appropriate different responses to the series of similar stimuli that differ in a systematic way. The process is made more complex and hence more difficult by the phenomena of interference, whereby one piece of learning inhibits another. Interference is thought to be one of the main cause of forgetting. In this type of learning, the student must learn different responses for stimuli which might be confused. The student learn to distinguish between motor and verbal chaining he or she acquired. The next condition of learning is the concept learning. A common response to a class of stimuli. In learning a concept, the learner responds to stimuli by identifying its abstract characteristic like shapes and color. This involves developing the ability to make a consistent response to different stimuli that from a common class or category of some sorts. It's form the basis of the ability of generalization, classification. In learning a concept, we respond to stimuli in terms of abstract characteristics like color, shape, position, and number, as opposed to concrete physical property like specific or particular intensity. In concept learning, the student's behavior is not under the control of a particular physical stimuli, but the abstract property of each stimulus. concept have to concrete response, or concrete concept have to concrete references, even though they are learned with the use of language. The next learning is the rule learning. In learning a rule, we create two or more concepts. For example, at 100 degrees centigrade, water will boil. Here, two temperature and boiling point are the concept related by the rule. The first concept, you know the temperature and the boiling point. This is the high level of cognitive process that involves being able to learn relationship between the concept and apply this relationship in different situations, including situation not previously encountered also. It formed the basis of the learning of general rules, procedure, etc. In learning rules, we relate two or more concept. Two or more concept. The next is the problem solving. The learner use the rule learned to achieve some goal. Problem solving is the combined product of two or more lower order rules. It thus requires an internal event, and that is thinking to take place for solving problem. Uh, this is the highest level of cognitive process according to Gagne. It involves developing the ability to invent a complex rule, that is algorithm or procedure of purpose of solving one particular problem, and then use the method to solve other problem of similar nature. In the set of event called problem solving, individual use rule to achieve some goal. When the goal is reached, however, the student has learned something more and is of capable of new performance using his new knowledge. What he or she learned is a higher order rule, the combined product of two or more lower order rules. Thus, the problem solving requires those internal events usually called thinking. Without knowledge of prerequisite rules, the problem cannot be solved. This is all about the conditions or the situations that occurs to enhance learning. Through these conditions and situations, Robert King explained how learning takes place. In the next video, I will discuss the other aspects of Cognitive hierarchies of learning. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.